Okay guys, welcome back. So we're doing another one of these military video reaction videos slash, in the military back in the day, which was not a Wednesday, it was actually a Friday. Full Up Fridays we used to have. We used to have what we called WATS, Weapons and Tactics Talks. And so the last one we did, everybody really enjoyed. And since a major part of my job was doing briefings and stuff, I figured, we'd try it again. And I get asked a lot of military questions, a lot of emails with just military stuff, which a lot of you guys know. And I love answering them. And you guys said you wanted to see more of the reaction videos, military stuff. So here we go. And this is one that I actually do have knowledge on. This is majorly my thing. So a viewer found a video about missiles and asked my opinion on it, and could I shed some light on this stuff? And yeah, I can. And this is a video, I don't know who put it together, I don't know where the information came from, and I'm not this is the thing, I'm not arguing the information in the video. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying when you see videos like this, people love to make videos about maximum this and most that, and that's well and good. But when you talk about military information, everything needs to be put into context because, and I said this kind of with the last video we looked at, we talked about, I think it was which is the better plane, the A-10 or the Su-25. And they had a lot of max and most, and, and one of the things I always said was, it doesn't matter what the max bomb load of a plane is because it never carries the absolute max. It's the typical combat bomb load or the max range. It's the combat radius, things like this. So in this video, when we're looking at the longest range or the highest speed or things like that, that's great, but that's not how missiles operate in combat. There is a range to which a missile will launch, fly away, and fall out of the sky. But that is not operational. That doesn't do anybody any good. So there's lots of things to factor in when you're talking about hey, how operationally effective is this missile? So I figured this is great. This is a great video for us to look at and to talk about. And I even have, I have some visual aids. Look at this. I got two. These are 132 scale missiles. Now, neither of these missiles are in this video because these are not air-to-air missiles. This is an AGM-78 standard. That's actually what it's called. Not like a standard missile, it's the standard missile. It's actually called standard. This is an anti-radiation missile. This thing shoots at radars and antennas and stuff. Or did anyway, because it was replaced later by the AGM-88 HARM, high-speed anti-radiation missile. I'm using them because they're the biggest model missiles I have, so they're the easiest to see. And we might illustrate stuff with them. I'm going to walk you through stuff in this video to help the layperson understand when you're watching videos like this, how they can make, without even distorting information to numbers. And by the way, there's classified numbers and there's open source numbers, and they're never the same. But to help you understand how they can make a video like this, which they don't even have to lie about numbers. They can use the actual accepted numbers, but it's really, there's much more to it than that. So we're going to watch the video. I'm going to react to the video and talk you through the video. But before we do that, I want to explain some terms that you're going to hear in the video just to make sure you understand what they all mean, so that we're not just talking about things and you're like, oh, I don't know what that even means, okay? So, little primer when we're talking about missiles, okay? So what's the difference between a missile and a rocket? Because a lot of people don't understand that. So, both of them have a fuselage, a body, a nose, they have fins, and they have, an exhaust. The difference is, we're talking military terms, a rocket, you shoot it. You shoot it and it goes on whatever path or ballistic arc it takes. This is a ballistic arc. Ready? Woo! Ballistic arc, okay? A missile has guidance and the ability to alter its flight path in flight with controllable flight surfaces. So while a rocket just goes where it's pointed or goes on an aerodynamic ballistic arc, a missile can maneuver and has guidance and can follow a target or follow a flight course plan and can maneuver around. So that's a different term. Now that's some languages don't have the distinction between a rocket and a missile. They just don't have the words, so they use it interchangeably. But in aerospace military terms, there is actually a distinction between a rocket and a missile. They're two different things. It is what it is. You're going to hear this video using the term kilometer over and over, and that's why? Because most of the world uses kilometers, uses that system. In the United States military and with a lot of our allies, we measure things in nautical miles. That's how we do stuff. We measure speed in knots. Sorry, my nose is very itchy right now. We measure speed in knots in nautical miles, not statute miles, but nautical miles. And why? You know, I couldn't give you a good explanation why, but that's how we do it. We measure range in nautical miles. So the difference is, you know, a nautical mile is just a little bit more than half of a kilometer. The actual number here, I have it here. 1 kilometer equals 0.539957 nautical miles. So as you read back and forth between different things, the ranges switch drastically. The max range you'll find for something we call the AA-10 is 130 kilometers. But that's about 70 nautical miles. And those numbers seem crazy different, but they're the same. And by the way, when we get up to that, there's different versions. Actually, there's 6 different versions of the AA-10/R27, depending on how you want to do the nomenclature. And they all are slightly different, but there's 3 long burn, 3 short burn. Anyway, military stuff gets complicated. So understand that you'll find things referenced in different sources with different numbers depending on where it comes from. If you're reading a source that writes in American, you're going to find it in nautical miles. If you find a source that writes things in anything else, it's going to be in kilometers. If you were to give a briefing in the U.S. military and you reference it in kilometers, you're going to get stuff thrown at you because, that's not how we reference things. There are different designation systems in different militaries, we'll say. For example, in any NATO country, like I just talked about that missile, the R-27, okay? The Russians/Soviets, back in the day, they reference a specific missile as the R-27. NATO doesn't use Russian designation systems. So what would happen is the bad guys would build a missile, and we would assign it, NATO would assign it, a NATO designation, and we designate their weapons according to purpose. So, for example, an air-to-air missile would receive an AA. The R-27 is the NATO designation AA-10 Alamo. That A word, Alamo, for the air-to-air missile. And that kind of makes sense, right? There's a lot of different ways that I, as an American military dude, reference different weapon systems, whereas the rest of the world generally references the R-27. I say, well, that's an AA-10. Now, in my mind, I make that transition automatically. I would never, in conversation, call it, an R-27. But when I see R-27, I instantly read AA-10. It's just kind of, it's the way my mind works. It's just what it does. It would be hard for me right now to tell you the designation of it's the R-73 now that I think about it, but the AA-11 Archer is just like a missile that is very important for us to know. And I just remembered it off the top of my head. Normally I can't spit it back the other way, from NATO to Russian, but I read the Russian designation and I translate NATO. So I might refer to things as their NATO names, and I'll try to make sure I'm comparing the two if I do it. When we have missiles, okay, so there's some key parts to a missile that make it work. First is propulsion. Most of a missile actually is propulsion. So like I couldn't tell you exactly what part of it, but a lot of it is the propulsion, because that's what you need it to make it go. The guidance system is actually right around here, okay, because it's all electronic. And there's different guidance systems that make it go. You've got a fuse somewhere in there, and then a warhead. And there's different warheads. We're not going to talk about warheads right now, but warhead go boom, make the thing blow up. And then you've got your propulsion. Different guidance systems that you're going to hear in this, because the guidance systems that make air-to-air weapons go are sometimes different, usually different, sometimes the same as air-to-ground munitions. But in general, there are, for these weapons, these are longer range, what we call beyond visual range, BVR missiles. Okay, these are the kinds of missiles where a pilot uses their radar, identifies a target on radar before they can see it outside the cockpit. That's why we call it beyond visual range. Do their mechanics, lock it up on their radar, and fire the missile. So generally, we're talking about radar-guided missiles. Now, there are some cases where, in modern days, a pilot can get a radar picture by data link, which means someone else is seeing that radar picture, which is really cool. We have a data link, and it is the easiest way to explain data link, if you don't get it, it is internet in the sky, okay? And so if I'm on the ground and I have, there's a system called Rover, there's a couple different ways to do it, but I don't want to get too into it. We have, the United States, followed up by NATO, have amazing data link capabilities where, different participating units and reporting units, if I'm on the ground and I see a target, I can enter it into the data link, and instantly anybody in that data link network sees that target, sees my description of the target priority gets filtered through everything else, and I can call in an airstrike. And it's at the point with our modern data link, I don't even have to get on the radio and do it. I can, all through digital communication, from the minute that target is identified in the data link, a fighter is assigned to it, pilot, receives the tasking, identifies the tasking, is committed to the tasking, all the way to the bomb drop and confirmation of destruction. Not a word has to be spoken. Not the best way to do business, in my opinion, but I'm an old guy, I want to hear a pilot talk to me about it. Same thing with air-to-air. It can all be done air-to-air, and the pilot in that cockpit never has to physically have the target on their own radar. And missiles can be guided that way too now, and that's a relatively new development. So there's digital guidance or data link guidance, which you may hear about. The most common way that missiles are guided is by radar, something called semi-active radar guidance or active radar guidance. Active radar guidance means that there is a radar in the nose of this missile. So my airplane is flying around. Okay, I'm looking if I have, the only airplane I have right now is a little egg plane. So I'm flying my little egg plane. I've got a radar in the nose of my plane. I designate the target. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever done. This missile is on my wing. I feed the information to the missile while it's on my wing. And then I tell the missile, that is your target, go. I shoot the missile, and at a certain point, the missile's own radar turns on, and now it is capable of looking, locks onto the target that I told it to look for, and the missile guides itself. The benefit of that is, because the missile guides itself, I can turn my plane away, I can get out of danger, I can clear the area of return shots, and this missile is now on his own. The downside of that is there's no way the radar in this missile is as powerful and as capable and has the electronic countermeasures capability as the radar in my plane. There's that. Now, a semi-active radar guided missile means that this missile has a receiver. It has something that looks for the designation from my radar. My radar has a special mode called a continuous wave illuminator. Think of it like this. This missile, it sees total darkness until I turn on the illuminator, and it sees like a flashlight. I'm shining a flashlight in the darkness on the target. The missile doesn't see anything except exactly what I'm shining that flashlight on, so it goes directly towards that spotlight of light. And that's all it does. If at any point it loses my spotlight, it has the option to continue going at the last point that it saw my flashlight, right? Or just self-destruct. But semi-active radar guidance means it goes after the radar target that I've illuminated for it. And that's about it. And again, sometimes it remembers where it was. Some of them can extrapolate while communicating with the radar. Well, it was a target that was doing this, and I lost it. But if it was doing this, and it hasn't moved, I'll maneuver over here and hopefully I'll find it and do that. But the benefit is you can very accurately designate for that target. As long as, you know, you maintain radar contact, there's really no way this missile can miss its target because you are designating for it the whole way. Disadvantages are you're getting closer to the enemy every single second. You're getting closer to the enemy, enemy's getting closer to you. You leave yourself very vulnerable to return shots. And in a lot of aircraft, not all aircraft, using that continuous wave illuminator means that you are now losing a lot of situational awareness on what else is going on around you. That's one of the reasons we moved away from semi-active radar missiles with the Sparrow, and we went to an active radar missile, the AMRAAM. So there's pros and cons to either method. If you're in a fight between an active radar missile and a semi-active radar missile, I don't want to talk tactics. We're just going to talk about the missiles. Then there's something called inertial guidance. So inertial guidance is really cool, and a lot of airplanes use inertial guidance to navigate around. It works like this. My airplane is parked in the hangar. When I'm in the hangar, if I park my airplane in a very specific spot, and if you've ever seen inside an Air Force hangar or go on a tour, or even on the tarmac, there's a little yellow line that we park the front nose gear of the airplane on. And right on that yellow line are very accurate GPS coordinates. When you turn the airplane on, you program those coordinates into the airplane, and the airplane knows exactly where it is. Now, as the airplane goes, it has all sorts of fancy, what are the words trying to come out of my mouth? Gyros and very fancy movement sensors and everything. So from that moment on, every millimeter the airplane moves, since it knows its exact starting position, and it has sensors on its speed and everything, it knows where it is because it's constantly updating. Inertial, meaning movement, right? It's updating where it is. Now, we can back that up with a GPS mid-course update. They have old systems that used to actually look at the stars and get a star update. Anyway, because of that, we can program a very accurate starting point to the missile and then launch the missile, and the missile can do the same thing. I know exactly where I am when I started because I know exactly where I am when I started, and I know what direction I'm flying, how fast I'm going, which, all that. The missile can inertially guide itself to where it needs to go because it knows where it started. Some missiles will use a combination of those different guidance methods to find out where they're going. There are some missiles that are complicated enough that they will use initial mid-course guidance. They'll start off with semi-active radar homing. They'll go towards where they're going. They'll get mid-course guidance. Sometimes they'll be data link guided. They'll just kind of go in a certain direction and then no sensors whatsoever so that the enemy can't pick anything up. They have no idea what's coming. And the plane's data link will give them burst updates and go like, okay, you're drifting, you need to turn left a little bit, and the missile will turn left a little bit. Okay, turn right a little bit. Okay, now turn on your radar and look for your target, and things like that. What we're not going to talk about in this video is infrared or heat seeking, because that's not a long range. The Russians do have some medium range infrared guided missiles, but they're not as accurate as in the long range as any of the radar guided methods. And when you're doing a beyond visual range missile like we're talking about, you need one of those longer range guidance systems. So with those terms in mind, we can get to this video, we can start watching this video, and we can start talking about not necessarily why this video is inaccurate in numbers, but why you need to be aware of how the numbers work to understand why this video is not 100% on the money as you watch it, okay? All right, let's go.
Missile that changed the shape of aerial combat forever. Yes, it's an air-to-air missile, capable of destroying fast and maneuverable jet fighters at ranges sometimes exceeding 200 kilometers. These high-tech weapons dominate the skies. Now, we're presenting to you the fastest and the longest range air-to-air missiles in the world. Now, here's our list.
All right, so like I said, I have no idea who these guys are, but remember, they're talking about the fastest and the longest range. Those kinds of numbers are numbers, but
At
it doesn't
number 8
mean much.
is the Meteor missile, which is an active radar guided beyond visual range air-to-air missile developed by European developer and manufacturer of missiles, the MBDA. The Meteor missile can travel up to a speed of more than Mach 4.
That's good. That's nice. Anything else?
At number 7
No.
is the Mitsubishi
Nothing else.
AM-4, which is a medium-range active radar homing air-to-air missile, often considered as modern beyond visual range missile, developed in Japan that can travel up to a speed of Mach 4 to Mach 5.
All right, so I want to address that. A more than beyond visual range missile. So you're either within visual range or you're beyond visual range. What is more than beyond visual range? Is that farther than I can see? That's a meaningless term. So while we're doing this too, while I've got the video paused, so they said a speed of Mach 4, whatever, maximum speed. That's you know what? Never mind. Let's watch the rest of the video and then I'll go into the talking about speed.
Traveling at a maximum speed of Mach 4.5 is the Wimpel R-27 missile, which is a medium to long-range air-to-air missile developed by the Soviet Union.
So that's the AA-10 that I told you about.
The Russian Air Force and Air Forces of
and
the
there are
Commonwealth
actually
of Independent States.
6 versions of that missile.
Wimpel NPO R-77 missile, also known by its export designation as RWBAE.
That's the AA-12 Amramsky
radar homing air-to-air missile that travels up to a maximum speed of Mach 4.5.
Okay, just while we're paused for a minute. So the AA-10, the R-27, so this is actually it's a very widely ranged and very widely used Russian missile. You'll find it on some very late model MiG-23s. You'll find it on the MiG-29 and the Su-27 and the Su-35 and the Su-34. So we in NATO, we designate it in 6 different flavors, okay? So we've got the AA-10 Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, and Fox, okay? The C and D models, we call them Chucks and Ducks. Not Charlie and Delta, actually. So you've got the Alpha Bravo, the Chuck and the Duck, and then the Echo and the Foxtrot. The A and B are what we call short burn. They're shorter range. A is radar guided, B is infrared guided. It's a heat seeker. C, the Chuck, is a longer range radar guided. The Duck is a longer range infrared guided. Now remember when I said that you like an infrared guided medium range missile doesn't really work out that well. The Russians do it in such a way that it does work, but you have to get a very specific lock, and the way they do it is it's almost like that infrared seeker is looking through a straw. That's how it's able to lock. Anyway, and then the E and the F are like anti-radiation, basically they're looking for radar emissions. So when you have 6 different versions of one missile, it's hard to compress them all down into a general, this is the speed of, this is the range of, because they all work just slightly differently. And then operationally, of course, you're not going to get the same performance out of them all. So when they just say the Wimpel R-27, I hate when they do this like this. There is no one AA-10. There's, when we're facing a threat, we use flat out different tactics. No, they never use the Echo and the Foxtrot exist, but it's like never used it. But there's very different tactics that we would employ versus an Alpha Bravo threat versus Chucks and Ducks. So just, again, the way they organize these things are more to catch your eye than to be very accurate.
At number 4 is the Astra missile, which is the first air-to-air missile developed by India. The Astra missile is an all-weather, beyond visual range air-to-air missile that features mid-course inertial guidance.
Everything is all-weather. Every missile they've shown.
It can travel up to a speed of more than Mach 4.5. At number 3 is the AIM-54 Phoenix, developed by the United States of America.
Which is
This
not
missile
used
is a long-range
anymore
air-to-air missile
at all.
guided
I mean,
with a semi-active radar homing and terminal phase active radar homing system that travels at a speed of Mach 5.
I'm not sure why this is even on the
The
list.
second fastest air-to-air missile in the world is the R-33, developed by the Vinpol. It is a long-range air-to-air.
All right. Take a look at that missile picture. That's a model rocket by the Estes company. I have literally built that toy rocket with my dad when I was a kid. I don't know why they're using that picture. I don't know if that's an inside joke. I don't know what the deal with that is. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going on with that.
Primary armament of the MiG-31 interceptor, traveling at a speed of up to Mach 5 to Mach 6. And now the world's fastest air-to-air missile in the world is none other than the Vinpol R-30.
None other than non-operational.
Hypersonic air-to-air missile with very long range. It was designed to shoot down AWACS and other C-41 Star aircraft.
Not C-41.
The Vinpol R-37 can travel up to a speed of Mach 6.
Okay, so that's not just saying it's not C-41 Star. It's C-4I. It's command, control, communications, compute. It's anyway. So number one, the R-33, otherwise known as the AA-9, was the kind of Russian equivalent of the AIM-54, and you know there's that. The R-37 though, otherwise known as the AA-13 Andy, is not an operational missile. It's not actually in service wide scale on any platform, and it's built as what we know as a havoc killer. Havoc stands for high value airborne asset or aerial asset. Things like they said, like the AWACS, things that are low density, high demand, things that if you were to take out just one or two of them could have a large effect on the war effort. It's not shot at fighters, it's not shot at combat aircraft, it's shot at combat support aircraft. So like I said, tankers, AWACS, reconnaissance planes, like big heavies, bombers, things that are not going to maneuver, not going to try to run away, not going to outmaneuver the thing, and definitely not shooting back at the launch aircraft. So when you're trying to compare missiles that are air combat missiles, and the last page that we saw, strictly air combat missiles, you know, they're trading shots back and forth, versus numbers 1, 2, and 3, those missiles were designed to shoot down big, fat, stupid, heavy, non-maneuvering targets. The AIM-54 was designed to defend U.S. Navy fleets against Russian maritime bombers. Now, yeah, they've been used against fighters, sure, but they've never been fired against a real competent enemy in any air-to-air combat. The AA-9 has never been used successfully really against anybody in air-to-air combat. And the AA-13 has not been used. So the thing is, when we look at, you know, things about the which is the fastest missile in the world, that is great. But what is it used for? So, you know, the thing about missiles is a missile going Mach 6 cannot turn to catch anything. It better have a very straight line course to its target, or it's not going to hit. By the way, missiles don't actually hit their targets. I don't know if you guys knew this. A missile has, in very few, air-to-air anyway, there's only one missile that I can think of that literally hits its target to kill it. It's like shooting a missile in the sky. It's like shooting a bullet with another bullet. That's how hard it is, you know, to do all those math calculations. So what a missile does is it gets close enough to the target, it blows up with a fragmentation warhead and just showers the enemy plane with explosion and fragments. And that's how they kill guys. They don't literally hit their target. So imagine, you know, you are at Mach 6 and the other guy is maneuvering around, you know, at Mach, let's say 2.5, you know, fighter speed, max speed, and now you're trying to make these two things connect. It just wouldn't happen. So it's great that these things can do a maximum speed of, we'll say, Mach 4, somewhere between Mach 3 and Mach 5. After an object is in the sky and turning and maneuvering, you know, every time it turns, it bleeds off airspeed, big time. Imagine how many G's a missile traveling at Mach 5 pulls when it turns to catch up with a plane. As soon as it fires, you know, very rarely, I'm just going to say, very rarely are two planes heading nose to nose. Sorry, I don't have a lot of screen to do this with, but nose to nose, perfect symmetrical angle at each other for a missile to take a straight course. A pilot that does that is screwing up. You don't want that. So the missile automatically has to make some turns. And every time it does that, it's bleeding off airspeed. Now here's another cool missile fact you guys might not know. Looking at the screen here, and in movies, you think that there's just constant flame and propulsion coming out of this. This is, most missiles, all air-to-air missiles these days are solid fueled, which means it ignites, it burns, and it's done. The AMRAAM, for example, has a burn time of a few seconds, and that's it. So this thing shoots, goes off the rail, and it's now gliding on kinetic energy. I mean, that's it. It cannot speed up any more than it already has. So what we do with missiles, a lot of times, pilots will do what they call a loft. They will, I'm sorry, guys, I'm using like half-built models here. Here's a half-built F-16. On the wing, when they're going to shoot, they'll start a nose-up attitude so they can shoot that missile up into the air, and it will go up so that it builds up speed, and then it will coast and come down so that it can pick up a little more speed, because it will, in that upward flight, start maneuvering, and it will bleed off speed as it maneuvers. There's a lot of complicated physics that goes into making missiles work. So, you know, talking about what the max speed is almost stupid, because they're not going to hit that. I mean, most missiles will never hit their max speed at all, ever, in their flight path, because the max speed is dependent on a perfectly straight and level, direct path to their target, with no maneuvering, with no loft profile, with nothing, and they'll never hit it. You know, the next part of this video is talking about ranges, and that's all good too. We're going to talk about max ranges, and I'll tell you why the max range of a missile is kind of a BS figure anyway. But one of the things I try to impress upon people when they ask me about weapon systems is, you know, a lot of people like to throw around max, most, best. You know, that is a meaningless qualifier for anything. It has very little to do with actual operational performance. Besides, if you could have the fastest missile in the world, if, you know, the bad guys have a system that makes your homing system or your guidance system non-operational or useless on the battlefield, who cares how fast your missile goes if it goes straight into the ground or it flies straight by the target or can't lock on, you know? And I'm not gonna get into the beeps and squeaks of that, because I'm likely to blow straight through classification levels when I get all excited talking about stuff. But, you know, there's certain flight maneuvers that you can do that will screw with the radar in a missile and mess with it right there. So that's why the max speed is a nice number to know. But there are instantly, from the minute a plane takes off, air density, the clouds, the sky conditions, the, you know, altitude. By the way, launching a missile from a higher altitude than your target automatically gives you an advantage in both speed and distance, regardless of, you know, your missile. When we talk about max range, if you get a 10,000 foot advantage on your target, you've now increased the max range of your missile simply because of physics and gravity. Because even if your missile runs out of kinetic energy, it can now coast and glide. So that, anyway, there's 100 things that go into combat that people just never take. I love this stuff. I could talk about it forever. It was my job. So anyway, let's continue on, and let's now talk about the best, longest range missiles, huh?
And now let's move on to the top 8 longest range air-to-air missiles. At number 8 is the Vimpel R-27, which was just mentioned a while ago, the 6th fastest air-to-air missile. This missile can go up to a range of 130 kilometers. At number 7 is the NBDA Meteor, going up to a maximum range of 150 kilometers. The Raytheon AIM-120D AM-RAAM is at number 6.
I can't stand people
This
that
is an American beyond visual
say those
range
letters
air-to-air
instead of just saying
missile
AMRAAM.
capable of all-weather day and night operations, which goes up to a maximum range of 160 kilometers. At number 5 is the AIM-54 Phoenix, which has got a maximum range of 190 kilometers.
Now remember, these numbers are quoting are fly away and fall out of the sky numbers.
Air-to-air missile is the Venful R77, which goes up to 200 kilometers maximum range.
And they're wrong if they're saying the 12 goes farther than the AMRAAM,
which has a maximum range of 304 kilometers. At number 2 is the R37, which has a maximum range of 400 kilometers. At number 1 is none other than the Nevada K100. This is an Indian-Russian air-to-air missile designed as an AWACS killer. This missile can go up to a maximum range of more than 400 kilometers.
Also not operational in any way.
So that, guys, was the list of the top 8.
Okay, so there you go. So, there they say are the ranges. And they list 2 missiles that are not actually serving operationally with any actual operational squadron. That's great if we want to put test platforms on there. So when we're talking about weapons and we're briefing them, we have maximum range, we have kinetic ranges, we have effective ranges. There is a range to which, like I said, a missile will fly off the rail and go in a straight line and then just tumble out of the sky. Doesn't mean anything. And like I already said, you can improve your maximum range by flying higher. You can improve your maximum range by flying in different weather conditions. Your maximum effective range at which you can launch a missile, if you have a target that is what we call hot, meaning flying towards you, you can launch your missile farther away because that bad guy is hot, which means he's closing the distance. He's constantly getting closer to you. If the bad guy's flying away from you, that missile range becomes a lot shorter because not only does your missile have to close the distance between you and the bad guy, but he's got to chase that bad guy down to get to him. So it's like double the range. So all of a sudden, a lot of things come into the range factor. A maximum range without giving the context is meaningless. And then again, that's straight linear range. Okay, so the distance between me and the bad guy might be and I'm going to use their numbers. I forgot what they said. It was for the numbers were wrong in that. Well, the numbers were skewed. There's no way an AA-12 has a longer range than an AMRAAM in combat. But the numbers might be, just for argument's sake, they say 100 kilometers for whatever it happens to be. I like this one. I'm going to use this one. It might be 100 kilometers, and there's only 80 kilometers between me and my target, but it's maneuvering. So my missile has to maneuver to catch to the intercept. And guess what? It's not just the physical range, but it's the energy stored in this missile. And we already said it's burning that energy up. So it might be within range, but it's not within range in terms of energy in the missile. There are certain ranges within which you can, it's known, and we have intel on stuff. Bad guys can launch a missile, and if you turn and go out, which means you kind of basically flip a bitch and go 180 and go out, you can defeat. We call it kinematically defeating because you don't have to use any electronics, you don't have to use any countermeasures. You can defeat that missile purely by turning around and running away. There is a missile, a point at which when that missile's launched, you can kinematically defeat that missile. And how do we know? There's different ways we know. There's different maneuvers that pilots will make when they launch missiles to do things, and we can kind of observe those. Sometimes there's different ways to know. Okay, so there's kinematic defeat ranges. Sometimes there are ranges where if you launch a missile, there's nothing the pilot can do. There's unless they are able to defeat the guidance system in the missile, they are dead. They're absolutely dead. So even though there's a maximum range on that missile, our pilots are not trained to just train monkey push button, get banana. They fly with discipline, and they fly with tactics, and they fly well inside of the maximum range of the missile, because they don't want to just press the button and risk the missile flying out of the sky. They want to, every nautical mile closer you can bring that missile to the bad guy increases your PK, your probability of kill. And believe me, missile movies make missiles look so much better than they are. The probability, the only thing in the world that has a probability of kill of a solid 1 is the ground. Okay. And the probability is, you know, a percentage. So 1 is the best, by the way. Now, I've had to explain my joke, and it doesn't make any sense. If they can get that missile to within a certain point and fire it, even if the bad guy turns around, maneuvers or whatever, that AMRAAM's going to kill him, no matter what. Because there's the maximum range, there's the maximum effective range, there's the kill, you know, there's the no escape range. And when you watch videos like this and they like to give you all these big numbers, they don't really tell you the full story. They don't tell you everything about it. By the way, there's the range of the missile in terms of the propellant. There's also the range of the missile in terms of the guidance system. You can shoot the missile from, you know, 1,000,000 miles away if that's what the propellant lets you do. Does you no good if the brain of the missile can't see the target. And sometimes, you know, there's, I mean, it happens. There's a few missiles out there that can shoot farther than the host radar's aircraft can see. So, you know, the missile may have a really great range and, you know, it sounds really, really good. But guess what? Pilot can't launch it that far because they're shooting at nothing. They can't shoot it until the radar can see it and tell the missile this is your target. In which case, what do they even have that range for? You know, I mean, it's great to say they have it, but it's really stupid. So as I watch videos like this, I just say, wow, it's, you know, it makes it all sound really good. It makes it sound great, but there's this thing called tactics, and there's these things called effective limitations, and, you know, it's just, this is why I love my job, being and I like saying this, a weapons and tactics expert, because knowing what really goes into it. So thank you to the viewer who enlightened me to this video. Didn't give me permission to use their name, so I'm not going to. But I hope you guys enjoyed this version of Weapons and Tactics with Doc P. I'm glad to, you know, talk you through these videos anytime you guys want. You're in for a mouthful when we look at these. Anyway, if you like this, let me know. If you don't like these kinds of videos, let me know that too. If there's a weapons kind of video you've seen and you want me to apply the old formal training instructor knowledge to it, I'm happy to do it. I know it's different from the regular stuff we do, but this was my life for 21 years. So I'll talk and talk and talk. All right then. You guys, of course, are all absolutely awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. Maybe I'll have models for the next one too, if I happen to have them around. But as always, I'll be back again real soon.